time now to talk finance and investment. Actually, quite a good segue into it, really, with what's been happening over in the States. Strategy consultant and business commentator Tim McCready has just returned from the Asian Financial Forum in Hong Kong. He joins me now to give us the lowdown on the latest developments in financial markets and investment opportunities. But I have to ask Tim, Morena, good morning.
Sure.
Were you watching the inauguration?
You know what? I didn't get up at 5 a.m. or whenever it was in New Zealand time to watch it, but I have been catching up on it since I got up. And just hearing that conversation with your correspondent is pretty disturbing. Some of the stuff that we're already seeing coming out of the United States. So it's interesting times ahead, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, okay, so you've just got back from Hong Kong, the Asian Financial Forum. Tell us a little bit about it and what who was involved and where did they all come from?
Yeah, so it's an annual conference that's held in Hong Kong. I've been 3 times, go every couple of years usually. There's about 3,000 people there, from politicians to investors, entrepreneurs, business leaders from around 50 countries. So quite well attended, people coming to, I guess it's really the biggest finance and business event in Asia to kick off the year. So it's a really useful way to get a read on how the year's shaping up.
Right. And how is it shaping up?
Well, yeah, I think probably the most interesting thing was, in line with what you've been talking about already this morning, is the fact that this conference was held last week. So today's inauguration of President Trump was really looming over the entire event and all of the uncertainty that's bringing with it. Especially in that part of the world, the tariffs that he's promised he's going to roll out across the world, up to 60% tariffs on imports from China. So although I guess, finance people are usually sort of cautiously optimistic most of the time, and they were, but I think there was a lot of conversation about opportunities that exist outside of the United States. So there was a lot of attention on regions like Southeast Asia and the strong growth that we're seeing in those markets with the growing middle class and the growing digital economy that's there. Also a big focus, I was quite surprised, on the Middle East. And there was a huge attendance from the Middle East there. And I think it's a region that's growing in its economic significance. But what the attendees from the Middle East were saying, particularly the Gulf states, were saying that they're really looking for opportunities to diversify away from their oil dependence. And of course, the flip side of that, everyone else that was at the conference was really looking to the Middle East as a possible alternative market to the United States in light of the uncertain times that we're entering.
Right, of course. And of course, in America, they're going to be drilling, won't they? So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so there has... What would you say were some of the key insights or takeaways?
Well, I reckon one of the absolute hot topics at the conference is the same thing that seems to be everywhere right now, that's artificial intelligence.
Right.
And I think the reason behind that is because, first of all, the finance sector is a real ideal industry for AI to make big progress in, because it's, lots of numbers, huge amounts of data that comes out literally every second, if you think of the share market, for instance. And that's exactly where AI thrives, because it can really quickly interpret data to detect patterns and future trends and make predictions, things like that.
Right. Okay. But what about the concerns, though? And we had Greg Cross on a road trip yesterday, and obviously he was he really pushed AI out into the world. There are real concerns about it replacing jobs in the finance sector and actually having that security around it and what it can do. Was that talked about?
Yeah, I mean, that was there was so many people that work in finance in the room that to have them sort of listening to how their world and their careers are being shaped by AI was really fascinating. There was one AI expert that spoke, and he talked about an artificial intelligence-powered investment fund that uses AI exclusively to buy and sell shares without any human intervention. Oh. And that fund has been outperforming the market by 30% each year. Which he explained is, because it's able to make decisions much more faster and much more efficiently than humans can. So, I mean, I think there is a bit of a fear that AI, and I guess it's an inevitability really, that AI will replace jobs and automate more and more tasks. But I guess like any technology that we see, it will also create new jobs, because I think some of the things that AI can, it can thrive in these well-defined, predictable scenarios, but it still lacks common sense and even ethics, as you kind of touched on, that can be really intuitive to humans. And one of the speakers gave this really great example of driverless cars. We see them, they're rolling them out across California, and they're able to drive well in perfect conditions. But we're still seeing instances where they drive into wet cement, for example, because they don't know what to do in that situation. Whereas to you and me, we know to go nowhere near that. So there is a sort of expectation that human intervention will still be needed, but AI will will do a lot of the heavy lifting.
Right. And was it sort of mainly looking at the future? It's all sort of revolving around tech and AI. Yeah.
I mean, it really was the dominant thing at the conference. And actually, another thing that was quite interesting to me is the way that AI is making financial services more accessible. So, the ultra wealthy, they use these things called family offices, which take care of all of their investments and help to optimize the amount of tax that they pay and things like that. And it helps make grow the wealth of really rich families for future generations. And that's great if you've got lots of money to afford a family office. They cost a lot of money to run. But what tech is able to do is it's able to help individuals and people that may not have a whole load of money to also do those things and make smart investments and optimize the tax that they're paying, things like that. So I guess that's the power that tech is able to bring to ordinary people like you and me.
Right. So outside of the conference, Tim, how was Hong Kong? What was the vibe in the city?
Yeah, it was actually quite interesting because, as I say, it was a couple of years ago, and I found that a lot of the restaurants were closing a little bit earlier than I remembered, and some of the shopping malls seemed a little quieter. And I asked around about that, and I think some of that is just the state of the global economy everywhere, but also there's this much closer integration now between Hong Kong and mainland China. And there's, for instance, these high-speed trains that link Hong Kong to mainland China that can get you there in about 45 minutes over to Shenzhen. And because of that, a lot of people from Hong Kong are going over to mainland China because the strength of the Hong Kong dollar means that they can do, they can buy their groceries there, they can do shopping, they can go out to restaurants far cheaper than they can in Hong Kong. Spoke to one person who, an older guy that was getting dental implants every weekend. He was going over to mainland China to get that done because it was way cheaper than in Hong Kong. So I think that seems to be changing a little bit. And it wasn't everyone. Some people I spoke to, some of the local Hong Kong people were adamant that they were going to stay in Hong Kong to spend their money. They weren't going to go across the border, even though they were going to, have to pay a lot more for things because, they wanted to support local, which I think we can relate to in New Zealand.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And what was the highlight of the trip, Tim? Did you get dental work done too?
No dental work done. Maybe a little later I might go over there for that. But no, I reckon anywhere in the world I go, it's always got to be the food, right? And I think Hong Kong, in terms of the variety of food that you can get and the quality that you can get, is always amazing. And and there's really budget places and really expensive places over in Hong Kong. And I actually had this really cool experience. I went out with some friends one night for barbecue pork and roast goose at this really cheap restaurant. Those tiny places in Hong Kong where you queue up outside and they cram you around a little table on these plastic stools. Yeah. And then so I had that, and then the next night I went out with a different friend of mine to this really fancy Cantonese French fine dining restaurant, and it was completely different. The plates were made of porcelain instead of plastic, and there was beautiful music playing and this kind of thing. The food prices there were about 10 times higher, but again I ordered the barbecue pork and roast goose because I was just kind of interested to compare how that would be different. And I got to say, the cheaper place absolutely won with the roast goose, which just goes to show, you don't need to spend a fortune to eat amazing food in Hong Kong.
Exactly right. Yeah. Oh, same here, really. Hey, Tim McCready, thank you so much. All the best for the year ahead too.
Yeah, thanks a lot. You too. And I've been really enjoying summertime, especially your road trip. So looking forward to today's.
Right. Oh, well, thank you, Tim. Thank you very much. You won't want to miss today's. Katie Wolf is on. It's fantastic. And actually, because you're in the business sector, we have Greg Foran on Friday.
Oh,
yeah. So that's going to be fascinating. But he's going on a road trip as opposed to a plane. As opposed to a plane. Yeah. Hey, Tim, great chatting with you. Thanks so much.